Well, for the second time today, it's my lovely job to welcome you, many of you my old friends, and nothing but the best for our friends. So we brought you to this beautiful residence, which is the home of every American ambassador since 1945. It's a very special house, and although the history of the house has nothing at all to do with the conference, I thought I'd give you a very truncated little bit of information about it, because several of you were asking in the greeting line about the history of the house, and it does have a nice emotional tug. It was built starting in 1928 for a very wealthy Czech family, the head of which was Otto Petschek. The family moved in the winter of 1930. So those of you who have seen Central European architecture can see that this house is actually very new by European standards. Many buildings in Prague go back 400, 500 years. The Petscheks moved in and loved it, but only for a very short time, because the Petschek family was very prominent and Jewish. Therefore, by 1934, it was clear what was going to be happening in Europe, and the family began making preparations to depart. One branch of the family relocated in London, and the others were successful in getting out and going to New York. Those of you who know the history of former Czechoslovakia know that as Germany began to prepare for war, it invaded, and this became part of the protectorate. This house, in fact, right where we are standing, was the headquarters of the Nazi General Staff, all through World War II. Then those of you who are here from Russia will know that Prague was one of the last battlegrounds in World War II, and Prague and the rest of this part of Czechoslovakia were liberated by the Russians. The western part of Bohemia was liberated by the Americans, but there was a dividing line going roughly from Karlovy Vary or Carlsbad down south through Pilsen. The Russians then took over this house, and it became the Russian headquarters. Finally, the Russians returned the house to the Czechoslovak government, which was trying to repay war debt. So they offered this house and the lovely gardens and the other house on the opposite side, which is the house of the deputy chief of mission, in exchange for forgiveness of war debt. The entire property was valued at 1.5 million US dollars, which was a good deal back then and is an incredible deal now. So since 1945, it's been the home of every American ambassador. The most famous ambassador that we had, or the one that has a name that resonates, was Shirley Temple Black. And she happened to be here during the Velvet Revolution, which is what the Czechs call the fall of communism and how it unfolded in their country and their particular history 20 years ago. The house has many charming features. It's noteworthy because it was built on a crescent, if you look in the Grand Hall. So it's not typically rectilinear. It's a bit more delicate and differently crafted than that. Unfortunately, not much of what is in the house is Czech. The chandeliers in this country that produces chandeliers by the dozen, chandeliers are actually Italian. Some of them are Murano. You can really tell in the corridor, they definitely have an Italian feel to them. The masonry was done by French and Italian craftsmen. Many of the other fixtures were done by Germans. So it was the best that Mr. Petschek and his family could bring at the time. It's also almost obsessionally symmetrical. So you will see windows and other windows that actually don't look out on things, doors that go to nowhere, simply because in the style of the time, it was important that everything be absolutely symmetrical. Apart from that, the only other interesting feature is that the doors that you see here actually collapse all the way down to the floor. And once a year we do this when we have the 4th of July, when there's good weather, and people can go all the way out onto the terrace and beyond, out into the garden. It's done by a very intricate mechanical device, so we only try this once a year. So with that, I just thought it would be good to have a little bit of history of the house, and in the course of the evening, I invite you to wander around only on the first floor, going all the way to the library, which which is almost always everyone's favorite room. And then the Heron Salon, this is the Winter Garden, the Damen Salon, and the dining room, all of which have beautiful things to look at, and antique furniture that is in fact antiques. And on the other side of the corridor, there's a very charming music room, which is almost rococo in its decor. So that's enough of the Architectural Digest, but now you know as much as everyone who works and lives here. So with that, I'd like to ask Jakub to say a few words of welcome, and then the program will begin.